In my introductory IELTS listening video, I asked what questions you think are the hardest ones, and the multiple choice question type was mentioned most. And in total honesty, I agree. I personally think IELTS listening is the easiest of four tests. But when I see a set of multiple choice questions in one part of the listening test, I immediately pay attention. To me, multiple choice is basically IELTS saying, here, read these questions quickly, now listen, now decide, and by the way, we'll try to trick you along the way. So in this lesson, I'm going to show you a simple system that makes multiple choice IELTS listening questions predictable. Not easy, predictable. You'll learn how the correct answer is usually paraphrased, how to avoid the classic keyword trap in listening, and what to do when the options are long and messy. And we'll test every tip in action with real IELTS questions from Cambridge IELTS 19. I'm Ethan. Grab a pen and some paper and let's start. Before we jump into the Cambridge questions, you need to know multiple choice in IELTS listening is not one question type. It's basically two different games. Questions with short choices and questions with long choices. These are the questions where each choice is just 2 or 3 words. And it usually works like this. All the choices get mentioned in the recording in some way. 1 or 2 choices will feel obvious because you see a keyword in the choice and you hear the same word in the recording. But those choices are usually not the correct answer, usually. This is what I call a keyword trap. So the big rule for short choices is if you hear the exact same word you see in one of the choices, be suspicious. I repeat, hearing the exact keyword in the recording is suspicious because the correct answer is very often the one that is paraphrased, not repeated. And short choice questions usually come in 2 formats. Choose one answer of 3 choices. Here you pick one correct letter out of 3, A, B, and C. And choose 2 answers of 5 or 6 choices, 2 correct letters. And yes, each correct letter gives you 1 point. So one question counts as 2 points. Now, with all this in mind, let's go to Cambridge 19 and look at some questions with short choices. Take some time and read these 3 questions. You can pause the video if you want and write down the keywords.
Great to see so many members of the Twinning Association here tonight. Since the twinning link between our two towns, Stanthorpe here in England and Malati in France, was established, the relationship between the towns has gone from strength to strength. Last month, 25 members of the association from Stanthorpe spent a weekend in Malat. Our hosts had arranged a great program. We learned how cheese is produced in the region and had the chance to taste the products. The theme park trip had to be cancelled, but we all had a great time on the final boat trip down the river. That was the real highlight. This is a special year for the association because it's 25 years since we were founded. In Malat, they're planning to mark this by building a footbridge in the municipal park. We've been discussing what to do here, and we've decided to plant a poplar tree in the museum gardens. We considered buying a garden seat to put there, but the authorities weren't happy with that idea. In terms of fundraising to support our activities, we've done very well. Our pancake evening was well attended and made record profits, and everyone enjoyed the demonstration of French cookery, which was nearly as successful. Numbers for our film show were limited because of the venue, so we're looking for somewhere bigger next year. We're looking forward to welcoming our French
All right,
visitors here
we'll go
next month.
question by question and find the answers. Question 11 is asking, what did the members enjoy? Choice A is going to a theme park, and the recording says the theme park trip had to be cancelled. So choice A is wrong. Then we have B, experiencing a river trip. The recording says, but we all had a great time on the final boat trip down the river. So the correct answer is B. In the exam, as soon as you find the correct answer, you should move on to the next question. But this is not the actual exam, so let's check out choice C. Now you see the recording mentions they learned how cheese is produced and that they tasted it, but it doesn't mention anything about visiting a cheese factory. This is what I mean by a keyword trap. The keyword of the question is mentioned, but it's not the right answer. All right, let's do question 12 the same way. Question 12 is asking, what will happen in Stanthorpe to mark the 25th anniversary? The recording says in Malat, they're planning to mark this by building a footbridge. So, yes, a footbridge is mentioned, but it's not in Stanthorpe. So, choice C is wrong. Then it says, we've decided to plant a poplar tree in the museum gardens. This is the plan for here, meaning Stanthorpe, and decided to is a strong signal. It's final decision. So choice A is correct. And finally, the recording says, we considered buying a garden seat, but the authorities weren't happy. So they thought about it, but they won't do it. So choice B is also wrong. And again, notice the trap. IELTS mentions the other choices too, but with a small detail that kills them. And by the way, as you can see, the choices of each question do not appear in the order that they are mentioned in the recording. Now, question 13. This question is asking, which event made the most money this year? The recording says, our pancake evening was well attended and made record profits. Record profits means it made the most profit, so choice B is correct. Now, look at the other two. It says everyone enjoyed the demonstration of French cookery, which was nearly as successful. Nearly as successful means close, but not number one. So choice C is wrong. And then it says numbers for our film show were limited because of the venue. If numbers were limited, the money was limited too. So choice A is wrong as well. And notice the pattern again. IELTS mentions all three events, but only one is correct. So doing multiple choice questions with short answers, we learn to read the question first before the recording starts, scan the choices fast and circle the keywords, listen for meaning, not matching words, because the correct answer is often paraphrased. Treat exact keyword matches as suspicious. And as soon as you're sure you found the answer, move on to the next question. Now let's check out a set of questions with two choices as correct answers. Read the questions first. Now listen and pick two correct choices.
I haven't seen you for a bit, Marie.
No, I've been busy with my project.
You're making a vegan alternative to eggs, aren't you? Something that doesn't use animal products?
Yes, I'm using chickpeas. I had two main aims when I first started looking for an alternative to eggs, but actually I've found chickpeas have got more advantages.
Right?
But how about your project on reusing waste food? You were looking at bread, weren't you?
Yes. It's been hard work, but Lav enjoyed it. The basic process was quite straightforward, breaking the stale bread down to a paste, then reforming it.
But you were using 3D printing, weren't you, to make the paste into biscuits?
Yeah, I'd used that before, but in this project, I had time to play around with different patterns for the biscuits and finding how I could add fruit and vegetables to make them a more appetizing color, and was really pleased with what I managed to produce.
It must have been a great feeling to make something appetizing out of bits of old bread that would have been thrown away otherwise.
It was, and I'm hoping that some of the restaurants in town will be interested in the biscuits. I'm going to send them some samples.
I came across something on the
The
internet
question is
yesterday.
asking, which two things did Colin find most satisfying about his bread reuse project? First, Colin describes the process. The basic process was quite straightforward, breaking the stale bread down to a paste and reforming it. This connects to choice C, overcoming problems in a basic process. But he says it was quite straightforward. So it wasn't a struggle and there were no problems to overcome. So choice C is wrong. Next, Marie asks about 3D printing. But you were using 3D printing, weren't you, to make the paste into biscuits? Colin answers, yeah, I'd used that before. This connects to choice E, learning how to apply 3D printing. But Colin didn't learn it in this project. He already knew it. He said, I'd used it before. So choice E is wrong. Then Colin explains what he enjoyed in this project. In this project, I had time to play around with different patterns for the biscuits and finding how I could add fruit and vegetables to make them a more appetizing color, and was really pleased with what I managed to produce. This is clearly choice D, experimenting with designs and colors. He says he was really pleased, which is a strong signal. He was satisfied. So choice E is correct. Then Mary comments on waste. It must have been a great feeling to make something appetizing out of bits of old bread that would have been thrown away otherwise. And Colin answers, it was, and that's choice B, finding a good way to prevent waste. He agrees that it was a great feeling. So choice B is correct. And finally, Colin mentions restaurants, and I'm hoping that some of the restaurants in town will be interested in the biscuits. I'm going to send them some samples. This connects to choice A, receiving support from local restaurants. But again, it's only a hope. So choice A is wrong, and the two correct answers are B and D. Again, you see in the audio, the choices are not mentioned in order. This means it's very important that you underline all the keywords in the choices and in the question before you listen, and then keep your eye on all keywords while listening, because the answers do not appear in the recording in the order that they are in the choices. Now let's move on to the second type of IELTS listening, multiple choice. As I told you before, the second type of multiple choice questions is the questions with long choices. This is the type of question in IELTS listening that gives me anxiety. These are the questions where each choice is a full sentence or a long chunk of words. Here, IELTS is testing whether you can find keywords, find which choice the speaker is talking about, and catch the detail that makes it true or false. And that's why long multiple choice feels heavy. There's too much to read in too little time, and the recording won't wait. Before the recording starts, your job is reading. You should use every second of that preparation time to read the question first and understand what it's really asking you. Then you underline the keywords in the question itself. Underlining the keywords in the questions is non-negotiable. You have to do it. But if you still have time, underline one or two keywords in each choice too. In each part of the listening test, before the recording starts, you have around 30 seconds to read the questions. Also, you have another 30 seconds to check your answers to the previous section. But as soon as you finish one section of the listening test, you should immediately go to the next section and start to read the questions. This is especially important if the questions in the next section are long format, multiple choice. By the way, don't forget to watch my video on how to recognize keywords instantly. Now, let's look at some questions from IELTS past papers. Read these questions and identify the keywords. If you need more time, pause the video. Now listen and answer the
Hi,
questions.
Jake. How are you getting on with the practical teaching?
It's harder than I expected, but I've got some great classes. How about you?
Not brilliant. I'm really struggling with my Year 12 science class.
Are they hard to control?
Well, I don't have discipline problems as such. It's just that they don't seem to think that science has anything to do with their lives. It's depressing. They listen to what I say, and I gave them a test last week, and the results weren't too bad, but there's no real engagement.
Right?
And as part of my teaching practice, I have to design an experiment for them to do. I was wondering about something on the children's diets. You know, asking them to record what they eat and maybe linking it to their state of health.
Let's think. So, your methodology would involve the children recording what they eat. Okay, but you'd also need to have access to the children's medical records, and I don't think people would be happy about that. Confidentiality would be an issue. If you could get the right data, the conclusions might be significant, but I suspect it's not going to be easy.
Right.
Have you thought about doing an experiment using animals?
Wouldn't that be upsetting for the children?
Well, the animals don't have to be harmed in any way. It could just be an experiment where they're given a certain diet, and the effects are observed.
Would I have to get permission to use animals?
Yes, you'd have to submit an outline of the experiment and fill in a form, but it's quite straightforward.
But if we found out that, say, a particular diet affects the health of animals, the same thing wouldn't necessarily be true for people. Would it?
No, that's true, but the findings for any experiment are going to be limited. It's inevitable.
I suppose so. So, what animals could I use to investigate the
All right,
effects of
let's
diet?
go question by question
Mice?
and find the answers. Question 21 is asking, how does Claire feel about the students in her Year 12 science class? Choice A, worried that they're not making progress. Claire says, I gave them a test last week and the results weren't too bad. So she's not worried about progress. The test results are okay. So A is wrong. Choice B says, challenged by their poor behavior in class. Claire says, well, I don't have discipline problems as such. So behavior is not the issue. and B is wrong. Choice C says frustrated at their lack of interest in the subject. Claire says they don't seem to think that science has anything to do with their lives. It's depressing. And she adds, there's no real engagement. This is exactly a lack of interest and frustration. So C is the correct answer. Now, question 22 is asking, how does Jake react to Claire's suggestion about an experiment based on children's diet? Choice A says he's concerned that the results might not be meaningful. Jake actually says the opposite. He says, if you could get the right data, the conclusions might be significant. So he's not saying the results are meaningless. That makes A wrong. Choice B is he feels some of the data might be difficult to obtain. In the recording, Jake says, you'd also need to have access to the children's medical records, and I don't think people would be happy about that. Confidentiality would be an issue. And he adds, I suspect it's not going to be easy. That clearly means the data will be difficult to obtain. So B is the correct choice. Choice C, he suspects that the conclusions might be upsetting. He doesn't say anything about the conclusions being upsetting. The upsetting idea comes later, and it's about animals. Wouldn't that be upsetting for their children? Again, IELTS is setting a keyword trap for you. So C is also wrong. And the answer for question 22 is choice B. Question 23 is asking, what problem do they agree may be involved in an experiment involving animals? The first choice says any results may not apply to humans. Claire says if we found out that, say, a particular diet affects the health of animals, the same thing wouldn't necessarily be true for people, wouldn't it? Jake answers, no, that's true, but the findings for any experiment are going to be limited. So they both agree results may not apply to humans. So A is correct. Choice B says it may be complicated to get permission. In the recording, Jake says you'd have to submit an outline of the experiment and fill in a form, but it's quite straightforward. So permission is not complicated, it's straightforward. And B is wrong. Choice C says students may not be happy about animal experiments. In the recording, Claire says, wouldn't that be upsetting for the children? But Jake answers, the animals don't have to be harmed in any way. So this is mentioned, but they don't agree it will be a problem. They move past it. So C is wrong. And the answer for question 23 is A. All right. Let's wrap this up. In this lesson, you saw the two types of multiple choice questions. When the choices are short, the main danger is the keyword trap. You hear a word, you see the same word, and you think it's the answer. But the correct answer is often paraphrased, and the repeated keyword is often there just to confuse you. When the choices are long, the main danger is time. You lose points because you didn't have time to read, underline the keywords, both in the question and in the choices. But IELTS still uses the keyword trap in this type of multiple choice questions. And now tell me in the comments which one is harder for you. Questions with short choices or questions with long choices. Also tell me what type of IELTS listening question you want me to make videos about next. I wish you good luck with your preparation, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.